Greetings and salutations. This is Abe Abdelhadi with The Bitter Truth, where we may not have all the answers, but we're going to ask an awful lot of questions. You can also become a bitter pill or a spoonful of sugar by visiting patreon.com /The Bitter Truth, where you can get a ton of fabulous swag, including the book War is a Racket by Smedley Butler, which is not a long book. So those of you who are not used to reading anymore, you could do this to 2 trips in the bathroom, I promise you. That being said, my guest today is Professor Bruce Lerro, co-founder of Planning Beyond Capitalism. If you listen to part 1, then you know that we're doing part 2 today. And Bruce, how are you, man?
I'm great. I'm glad to be here.
I'm glad you're here too, man. Big honor to have you. So let's kind of pick up where we left off. I mean, I know you had some thoughts on the DSA and kind of where you thought they were going, and go from there.
Well, okay. So what I would say is, I don't care for DSA. I feel like they're a very manipulative organization. Since the 1970s, they were talking about, trying to be the left wing of the Democratic Party, and I think it's been a complete flop.
Yeah.
But what I have hope for is not the leadership, because a number of people have said to me, DSA, the local chapters are not the same as the national committee, and they're this and they're better. And what I've heard from people is that there's a division within DSA between the rank and file people and the older leadership. So there's like a division between the old guard of DSA and younger people. And my hope is that some of these people that are in DSA will get fed up with DSA's wanting to reform the Democratic Party and get the hell out and get involved in a third force outside of the party. And that's my hope for them, because they do have, I think last count, they had something like 60,000 people in there.
Mm-hmm.
And if a significant number of those people walked out, that's a lot of people. And, some of the people in DSA are good organizers.
Sure.
And getting them out of the Democratic Party and into something independently, I see that some of those folks are good organizers. The labor notes people are good organizers. So we don't just need more people. We need people that know how to organize. And those two together are pretty significant. So my hope is that the DSA rank and file people walk, and they look into the, People's Party or some other group that's forming. I think all sorts of these groups are going to form outside the Democratic Party because Biden is so disgusting that it's really hard even for them. To give them credit, at least they didn't endorse Biden so far.
Right.
And so that's a big step for them.
Yeah, but that's the challenge. You got the Justice Democrats, which was the Cenk Uygur, Kyle Kulinski bunch, and I think those two guys, I got my issues with Cenk Uygur, but I think Kyle Kulinski's heart is in the right place. And, they handpicked these people to run, and within no time at all, they capitulated. It's like you cannot run within the Democratic Party.
Right. That's right.
It's like libertarians do their thing. I respect them. I don't agree with them all on everything, but I at least respect them. They're going, yeah, well, we're actually conservatives. We don't want to be in every war. We don't have to have this defense budget up the ass. Why are we doing this? Whereas the Republican, the quote unquote, Jerry Falwell level 1976 on Republican, does the typical corporate shit. I wrote a paper a while ago called Guns, Gays, and Abortion. My theory for the longest time is that's the only difference between these two parties. Except for the NRA, they take money from the same places.
Yeah.
And to get a little darker, they fly on Epstein's plane and do God knows what to kids, both parties, whether it's Ehud Barak or Bill Clinton or Donald Trump. And so what are they doing for us? So when I look at the DSA, and I've seen people run with the DSA with the best of intentions. Semer Hernandez ran for Senate. no support whatsoever. Got her ass kicked in the primaries. And they gave it to MJ Hagar, who's this total corporate tool, just reprehensible person. And, it's like, that's who, ends up like winning. You can't run within these parties. It has to be something else.
I think your point is really well taken. And it's backed up by, there's a guy, really wonderful political sociologist. His name is William Domhoff. And he devoted his whole life to studying empirically as a scientist how the ruling class rules. And when he talked about the two parties, he just said the difference between the parties is very close to what you described. They fight on cultural and religious issues, but when it comes to economics, they are on the same page. And people get pushed out of shape about the difference between the parties, but the differences are usually they fight about religion, they fight about sex, but when it comes to capitalism, there is no difference. They're in the same,
at all.
Yeah, they're in the same ballpark.
My favorite example was at the State of the Union address a couple months back when Nancy Pelosi makes this big deal about tearing up the president's speech.
Yeah.
But then her and AOC and all these assholes give a standing ovation to Juan Guaido. Yeah. I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, so then you are on Cheeto Jesus' side, including but not limited to giving him his entire goddamn legislative agenda.
Yeah.
I mean, I interviewed this Republican guy a couple weeks back, and he goes, well, the leftist leanings of Joaquin Castro. And I laughed openly. I'm like, wait, leftist?
Yeah.
He's a corporate hack. He's voted for banking deregulation with Donald Trump. What are you talking about? Yeah.
What's interesting to me is, like, if you look at the differences, I used to do this in a class where I put on the board, I draw a line of about an inch apart, and then I would draw two lines perpendicular to it. One line was the Democrats, one line was the Republicans. And as long as the whole line is only an inch, it seems like there's big differences between the Republicans and the Democrats.
Right.
But if you extend the line out left to right, you see that, wait a minute, if you say, okay, if you go all the way to the right and you have the libertarians, you go all the way on the left, you have the anarchists, you see that relative to those positions, the Republicans and Democrats, the differences are insignificant.
Right.
And that's the thing. I think what's always amazed me, Abe, is I always thought that the hardest thing to do would be to convince people that capitalism is fucked up and we need socialism. And what I found is that people seem more open to that, and they're more defended about the Democratic Party, that they insist that the Democratic Party is different from the Republican Party.
Right.
And they will hold on to that for dear life. That's a bigger issue for them than capitalism and socialism is. That the Democratic, because if they face that, they would have to face that you do not live in a democracy. There is one party. There's the party of capital. You have to face that. Right. And so people hold on to this single alternative because they don't want to face that we don't live in a democracy, and we never have.
Well, by definition, I mean, none of the founding documents have the word democracy in it, period.
Right.
At all. And so we have this illusion of democracy.
Right.
And it cracks me up when, like 4 years ago, I was like there's like four guys in Austin that think like me. All of my so-called Democrat friends, watch too much goddamn Rachel Maddow and MSLSD. But I mean, like literally almost to the person, they're fighting me on this. And I'm going, well, hang on a second. What about this democracy? If we respect the democracy so much, then why is it that we fucked the Russian elections the first two times they ever had an election, 92 and 96, giving $1.5 billion to Yeltsin in 96 to make sure he got it? Time magazine even did a cover story on it. Yeah. We've interfered in over 100 elections between 1948 to now.
Yes.
And that doesn't count coups or assassinations.
It's interesting.
Like shit going on in Bolivia or Venezuela. Just elections.
Yes.
Over 100.
Yes.
Yet we clutch our pearls and go on about this fake story about the Russians. Oh my God, the Russians! And we lose our fucking mind.
Yeah.
Over a story with a country that barely has double the GDP of South Korea.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got, what, 20 bases outside of Russia, mostly in Syria, because we keep fucking about in Syria. Well, then why are they defending Syria? I don't know. If Russia invaded Mexico, what would the United States do?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody asks these questions.
Right. Yeah, I think people's sense of foreign policy in this country is so bad that people don't even know where these countries are, let alone like what's going on with them. I remember reading something, I forget where I got this from, but it was something like a United Nations study does comparisons of what countries have the most democratic processes.
Right.
The United States came out 29th. Okay. And you know who is in the top 5 is Venezuela.
Yeah.
Venezuela's is they have some of the best processes in the world.
Well, even the last election, they had like 9, including the UN, refereeing their elections.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was clean.
Yep.
You know, and we're sitting there going, you know, Mike Pompeo with a fucking straight face saying, well, you know, and meanwhile, Colombia, right next door, enjoys a 30% poverty rate.
Yeah.
Right? They kill campesinos by the thousands. They rig elections. They murder journalists, but they're capitalists. At least they say they are. So they're cool. And what does capitalism mean? They give us their bananas and their cocaine and their coffee for free. And their people work for jack shit. That's what that means. I mean, my favorite example in all this shit, when people like look at me like I'm doing card tricks in front of a dog, is Salvador Allende in Chile, right? Anaconda Copper, they want it in. And he's like, fuck you guys, right? They put in Augusto Pinochet, this murderous general piece of shit, who in no short order is taking $500,000. He died worth $28 million in 1990-91 when he finally resigned because of his cancer, right?
Yeah.
How many people did he kill? And we kept his army intact. We did everything that we were supposed to do to make sure that Anaconda Copper paid no money, no overtime. And we arrested Manuel Zelaya in Honduras in 2009 because he raised the minimum wage. That was his only crime. In his fucking pajamas. And that was Barack Obama and goddamn Hillary Clinton. So when people tell me about the Democratic Party, and then they wonder why I do this in person, which is why I'm probably single at this point in my life, it's just like, it drives me bananas. And a guy like you who's been around the block, who's seen this stuff, it's got to be doubly frustrating, especially when people think they could reform the Democratic Party from within. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. But let's talk a little bit about I'd like to ask you a question. I mean, what are your thoughts about what I call the Sandinistas? I mean, what do you think? Right, I didn't invent that. I know.
I saw it online. I thought it was funny. And then my friend got pissed at me when I said Sandinistas. He goes, that's an insult to Nicaraguans. I'm like, oh, come on. Have a sense of humor. But continue.
Yeah. So what do you think? What's your sense about what they're going to do? I mean, because they're another big part of this.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are.
What do you think? I mean, I know my thoughts. What are your thoughts about what do you think is going to happen with them? What do you think they're going to do?
Well, I'll be short and sweet because you're the expert, and I want you to be a smarty pants and talk. So I'll throw my 2 bits in there. But
okay.
In 2016, 68% of them voted for Hillary Clinton as they were told. Right. Robbie Mook, who was running Hillary Clinton's campaign along with John Podesta, got Bernie's email list. And right before the convention sent out this big unity email thing, to make sure everyone played ball at the convention, even though they blackballed most of his people and white sound noise cannon them, whatever.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be a bigger disaster, and I'm actually looking forward to the destruction of the Democratic Party. I think what's going to happen is, by pimping Joe Biden, the way they have been, he's going to be drooling into a diaper by August.
Yeah.
So they're going to pull, and this is something people look at me like cross-eyed when I say this. This is going to be like McGovern and Tom Eagleton in 1972. Okay. People always wonder why McGovern got his ass kicked. Well, he was already looking a little flip-floppy, a little soft. And then however Nixon got the info, they put out that Tom Eagleton, his vice presidential running mate, had a electric shock therapy. He went through several sessions of electric shock therapy. He was a sitting senator,
Mm-hmm.
And, none of his guys vetted him or whatever. So with it, and so McGovern was like, no. We're sticking by Tom. He's our guy. Well, a week before the election, they ditched Tom Eagleton and put in Sergeant Shriver, Kennedy by marriage, to be the VP guy. And of course, you know what happened with McGovern? He got his ass kicked. He took one state. That was the end of it. And so I see with the Sandinistas, I see a smaller percentage going for Biden, even fewer going into the election after they replace him with, say, Hillary Clinton or Andrew Cuomo.
Yeah.
And I don't think the Sandinistas are as dialed in and bought in and owned as they were last time. A lot of those people were woke. No offense. They didn't know any better.
Yeah.
And without one shred of evidence, thought Hillary Clinton was better, quote unquote, than Donald Trump, when they really were the same person with a couple of Supreme Court justices. So that's my short answer to that. Is I think this is going to be the end of the Democratic Party, because Trump will win again. Especially he's running left of the Democrats now.
Right.
He'll probably have a UBI and Medicare for all by the end of summer, by executive order even. Which means all the red states that think that's socialism are going to love him because they're helping him out. They're getting help. They got a check coming in all of a sudden. Yeah. So that's just the short answer of that. But I honestly think, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, the problem for me is like wanting to see them get out of. See, I think they're not really attached to the Democratic Party. They're attached to Bernie. Right. And they're attached to Bernie, and they want Bernie to win. But if Bernie decided to get out, which he's not going to do, and he's already committed to not doing that, if he said, I've had enough of this shit, I'm going to form my own party, people would follow them. People don't give a fuck about the Democratic Party.
Oh, in a minute, but he won't do it though.
No. But so they're left with, what do we do now? So there's going to be a percentage of them that are going to say, fuck the whole system. I'm not voting at all. Some will be stupid enough to vote for Biden. My hope is that a larger percentage of them will look for another party or some independent combination of the kind of things we've talked about, whether it's the Movement for a People's Party or it's Labor Notes or it's Occupy, all these things together. But for me, what's hard is I go on Bernie or Bust sometime, and I just read, some of their stuff, and I comment on them along the way. And what's the most painful thing is I can't say to them, look, here is a working class party. We're new, we're building. It's like I don't have something to show them to say this is where you can go. So, that's our challenge. And I think, as I said before, I think the next 6 months might pull something together that we wouldn't imagine happening because of the coronavirus. I think that this is going to make people think more organizationally than they might, because they can't go back into la la land and forget about the whole thing, because the economic conditions are so bad now.
Well, see, and to your point, though, I think the bigger challenge too. I mean, I've been doing this in person and online. People who don't know who Joe Biden is.
Yeah.
And they say anybody better than Trump. Yeah. I'm like, really? Pol Pot? Is Pol Pot running? Because I think I think you might think he's better than Trump. He's only killed 2 million people, whatever. I mean, the challenge I have with a lot of these folks is, for example, I'll say, well, then you must like the current prison system. Black people, brown people. And they go, well, what do you mean? I go, Biden wrote the crime bill, co-authored the crime bill.
Yeah.
If you like the modern prison system, which I think we can all agree is modern day slavery, then so you must like that system because Biden wrote that.
Right.
You must like banking deregulation and the crash of Glass-Steagall because Biden was on with that idiot Larry Summers and everybody else. So it's like they're so dyed in the wool with this bullshit. Anybody with Trump, because he says,
I just find it, if you really break this down, Abe, if you think about like them saying anybody but Trump, they are already admitting that they are completely passive and have no control over the party. They don't even fight for a particular candidate. They just give the Democratic Party whoever they're running, and no matter how bad they are. And this includes people like Noam Chomsky. Noam Chomsky.
Please
right?
Go.
He's every 4 years. He's an anarchist. 3 out of 4 years, and in an election year, he starts talking about the Democratic Party. How far, when you say, anybody but Trump, how far do you go? Suppose they pick some CIA Democrat. Is Noam Chomsky and people like that going to say, well, that's better? So is a CIA agent better than Donald Trump? I mean, how far do you go with this slippery slope where you don't draw the line anywhere?
Well, Chomsky, I mean, and when I was a kid, I used to be intimidated by him. Now I'm like, I would love to just beat the shit out of him on my show for half an hour just to talk about that one subject.
Yep.
I mean, he could talk about World War I and the Balfour Agreement up the ass, and I would be like, But on this, like you said, every 4 years he comes out and he does the same. And he's been doing this for decades, not just, because like he was even saying Hillary Clinton was a better bet.
That's right. He was.
And I'm like, wow, Libya? Syria?
Yeah, I think I don't really understand this. I don't even know when this began, but there is an idolization of him by the anarchists that is really pretty astounding to me. They give him a free. I have a Facebook friend who he posts great stuff. We're on the same page 95% of the time. But then he says on the issue of, and he's an anarchist, and he's on the issue of Joe Biden, I think Noam Chomsky is right. This is a fucking anarchist. I mean, anarchists for most of their history, one of the best things about them is that voting is fucked up. Voting is for fools, people like Emma Goldman. And so I don't know what's happened to them recently where they suddenly have decided that they are going to, under some conditions, vote for a Democrat. I mean, I don't know when that shit started, but.
Well, I mean, I think part of it too is that, the short answer is like, if I met Noam Chomsky or got him on my show, and I've tried, but the number one thing is I don't idolize him. I respect him.
Right.
And I think he's right 80% of the time. I don't agree with him on Israel. I don't agree with him on the lesser of two evils bullshit.
Yeah.
And the things that come out of his mouth, like Donald Trump's the most dangerous.
Yeah.
Comparing him to Nazi Germany. I'm like, well, first of all, we've been closer to Nazi Germany a few times beyond Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Barack Obama, for example, where you getting habeas corpus and posse comitatus, and George Bush, we got Patriot Act 1 and 2. I mean, but everyone was asleep and it was okay. And it was when the mean orange man showed up.
Yeah.
And Chomsky plays right into that. And I think with these people like your friend that you're talking about, this anarchist, I think the biggest challenge with that is Noam Chomsky, like Bernie Sanders or any of them, it's your spirit animal. It doesn't mean anything. It's a leftist Rorschach test. So just because you agree with Chomsky on 70% of the things, there's nothing that makes the record go,
Yes.
The first time about 10 years ago, I saw Chomsky speak on Israel, and I was a Chomsky, like I had almost got a tattoo, right? And the first time I saw him speak on Israel was about 10 years ago on some YouTube thing. I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
The end of Israel as we know it. Yeah, because Israel sucks, bro. I'm sorry. If you want, there's no two-state solution. You're a fucking liar. The only way we could do this is a right to return and give Arabs the right to buy land at least, because I don't want to kick out 70 years of people that, 2 or 3, 4 generations, they didn't do anything wrong. They're just sort of, their granddaddy got in there. Whatever. That's a bigger conversation. But to sit there and say, oh, it will mean the end of Israel as we know it. Yeah, dipshit, because the end of Israel as we know it would be good. Because right now they're Iran. This is the thing. They're a theocracy. They are Iran. We keep going on about Iran. Israel's a theocracy. If you say you're the Hebrew's your language, and you're the Jewish state, by definition, no longer democracy, because there's a black guy in this country right now that has the same ID that I got. He doesn't have a blue or green ID with several levels that they're subject to the whims of a soldier that stops you at a checkpoint and can shoot you or not shoot you.
Yeah.
Versus, whereas with Gaza and West Bank, I got family in the West Bank. And, and they're lucky. They live in this little tucked away village. So they can armchair quarterback this whole thing forever and ever. But like the rest of the Arabs that live there, the rest of the Palestinians that live there, They're
Yeah.
fucked. And it's been nothing but a complete imperial colonial consolidation.
Mm-hmm.
So when Chomsky says this shit, it drives me fucking bananas.
Yeah.
And when people go, oh, Chomsky said it. Well, fuck Noam Chomsky.
Yeah.
10 minutes, because I don't buy this shit either.
Yeah. You know, I've read a couple of things. I was working on an article, and I got this from the Greenville Post. They did a really good comparison of the difference between him and Michael Parenti, and it was really a good, Michael Parenti, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was really a good systematic comparison. And, one of the things is that Parenti is always pointing out is if you can look at the countries that are called socialist and simply look at the pros and cons of what do they do well, what do they not do well, and just see that as a point of a spectrum. Like there's different kinds of, there's social democracy, there's the state socialism, there's anarchism, and look at them as kind of a family on a spectrum. Kind of the acid test is, do you automatically say that any socialist country, like Noam Chomsky does, it's kind of like, well, they're authoritarian. And so you throw away the fact that the literacy rates go up, they have good housing,
right.
They're not in poverty. Those are real, those are real advances. And
yeah,
it's important to say, to defend those without saying that, like I wouldn't say that, okay, China, there's some people that will say like, well, China's really a socialist country, and, and they go through all these contortions about why it's still a socialist country. I mean, I don't think, of course, there's big class divisions, they have worker strikes, but they have done some good things.
Sure.
So I think just looking at these countries dialectically, just saying, okay, there's each of these have pros and cons. That's a big scandal for all the ruling classes want us to just one way or another go along with their foreign policy program and not use our own critical thinking about, well, wait a minute, like, so China, it's like for China to be trying to go off the dollar, I think that's a good thing. For Russia to be going off the dollar, that's good because it undermines this one world U.S. domination. So even if they have their internal domestic problems, internationally, it's good what they're doing.
Well, see, and to your point really quick. So in the last couple of years, Russia has cashed in 100% of U.S. T-bills. They own no more U.S. debt. They're done.
Yep.
And China is up to about 20% of U.S. T-bills, the highest they've ever been. Because they always hover between 5-6%. They're a little cash strapped. They get, but they're up to 20% and probably counting.
Yep.
And about a year and a half ago, China is off the dollar on most things. They have the petro yuan.
Yes. And
they're buying soybeans from India,
yep,
which they could have always gotten cheaper, but now they're doing it because we fucked them on these tariffs. So kind of to your point, piggybacking on what you just said, how much longer do you think the United States can be a reserve currency? Because that's about what keeps our shit going.
Yeah.
That's how we can be in 149 countries, support 73% of the world's dictators, bomb the shit out of everybody, take their stuff for free. When that reserve currency goes away, we're already a third world country. It's going to probably be a developing nation by 2025. So, like, what are your thoughts on us maintaining reserve currency status? Isn't that like a vote? And we have a debt to income ratio that's really high. And what I understand is the last time we voted on this a few years back, we almost missed it by 2 countries because our debt to income ratio is so high. And now it's higher because China's cashing in debt, Russia's cashing in debt. We're losing that hegemony. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on?
Well, I mean, I think, connecting this up to what we've been talking about earlier about all the different pieces of what can be an alternative to the Democratic Party in this country, there could be some sort of international relationship between the forces that are fighting to be independent of the Democratic Party, and possibly, I don't know what it would look like, but forming some kind of relationship with Cuba, with China, with countries that are, with Venezuela, with countries that are already socialist at a state level, and trying to find some mediating relationship with them, because they're the ones that have been doing the most with this coronavirus. So I mean, it's just like people. I think people that are reading the news will say, "Jesus, look at what the Cubans are doing. Look at what the Chinese are doing to go into countries with their doctors and things like that. Maybe they're not so bad, you know." So I don't know what some kind of international relationship with them would be between us and them. I don't know what that would look like, but that's another part of this.
But isn't that the crux of American exceptionalism, though? I mean, we do this shit all the time. I mean, like what pissed me off about Venezuela and Bolivia the last couple of years is we've had examples in our lifetime, my lifetime, the last 20 years. I mean, yeah, I could bore you silly about the Maine and the Spanish-American War. Okay. You're not going to give a shit. No one's going to give a shit. Well, that happened before we were born. Right? You know, like no one gives a fuck about Vietnam. Even. Yes. When I was a kid, Vietnam was a big deal, right? No one gives a shit. So, but in the last 20 years, we've had example after example after example of being lied into every fucking military adventure that we've gotten into. And with a straight face, people will tell me, well, you know, Maduro's a bad guy.
Yeah.
Really? And it's our business. Why? We support 73% of the world's dictators. And this one guy we got to go after?
Yeah.
Bolivia? Yeah. Like, really? Well, he's been there for 14 years. Well, Angela Merkel's been there for 15 years.
Yeah.
I guess we should knock out Germany.
Yeah.
Based on your metric.
Yeah. You know what's interesting, Abe? You know, I do a class on brainwashing and propaganda. And there's a really good theorist who talked about who's most susceptible to propaganda. And what he said that was very surprising to me is most people think, okay, the working class is going to be the most susceptible to buying stuff, buying the propaganda. And what he said was that it's the upper middle class that's most susceptible to propaganda because they do all the reading and the crafting of the explanatory systems that the rulers use. And so they're the ones that are most actually believe the things that they're writing about. So, you know, it's like, how can the people that say the things you're describing are usually not working class people. There are upper middle class liberals who think they are educated, and they say this utterly ridiculous stuff, and they're too proud to think, you know, you may be propagandized. You know, you may be having these thoughts and you don't know where they've come from. Right. And maybe somebody is working with your mind. And they are. And these liberals who the Democratic Party, and they say this stupid stuff about international stuff, they haven't a clue when they're too proud to think maybe they can be somebody's working with their mind.
Right. Well, and these are the same idiots who think that food is grown in supermarkets and don't know any better, and they scoff at the flyover states, right? Like they laugh at Texas. I moved here 5 years ago.
Yeah. From
LA, but born and raised LA kid, born and raised in LA. And when I got out here, I couldn't tell you how many people that saw my Facebook. Oh my God, that's like just a bunch of Republicans. And I'm like, well, I grew up in LA my whole life. You know how many white racists I met in LA? Like a fuck ton. Like a fuck ton. What do you think LA or San Francisco is the bastion of holy thought? They're a bunch of cocksuckers too, man. Sorry. You know, and it's like I'll go to San Antonio, which is more red than Austin, or I'll go to Dallas, which is more red than Austin. And you know, they're all good people trying to figure out their way.
Yeah.
And the one thing I'll say about a lot of Trump voters that I know, most of them, they're not racist.
Right.
Most of them just thought, hey, we got lied to by Bush and Obama.
Yep.
And the states that he took, people love to forget, voted for Obama twice, voted for Bernie in the primary.
Yep.
And this is an interesting little thing I did last year. I was writing an article, and I found this interesting study at Wesleyan, the Wesleyan Media Project. You know, Wesleyan, that right wing, you know, think tank. Trump spoke to policy 4-1 over Hillary Clinton, which I thought was interesting. So although it was ham-fisted, and toddler-like because he's a 12-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
Trump spoke to policy 4-1, jobs, wars, the whole 9 yards.
Mm-hmm.
All she could say was, it's my turn, grab him by the pussy, and he has no character, even though she had a semi-professional team defending a serial rapist that they used to call the bimbo eruption every time a chick would show up on Bill Clinton's behalf, right? Mm-hmm. So this is the hypocrisy where, like you just said, people like to think they're so educated, but you belong to a tribe. You're behaving in a tribal way.
Right. Just a point about what you were describing about the Democrats. Let me see. I just lost my train of thought. Go back to Abe. Just go back to the last thing you said. I might be able to get it back.
Oh yeah, no. I was just simply saying that there's an inherent hypocrisy.
Oh, I know what I was going to say. Yeah. It was about the Trump voters. There's a guy that this supports what you were saying. There's a guy, a labor historian by the name of Kim Moody. Have you ever heard of him?
No, I haven't. Okay.
Kim Moody did a really deep study of the voting patterns when Trump got elected. And he said that the people that the social class that most consistently voted for Trump was the small business owners. And he said exactly what you described. The white working class people, many of them voted for Obama, and they voted for Obama twice. Obama didn't deliver the goods. So they figured, fuck them. This Trump seems like an outsider. I'm going to vote for him. But I completely agree with you. They're not across the board racist. The media always presents the worst case scenario to make them look ridiculous. And of course, there are people that are ridiculous there, but 100%. not all the people that vote for Trump are stupid people. And there certainly are bimbos that vote for the Democratic Party over and over again.
Well, look at Biden. People with a straight face telling me that Biden is better. And I could tick off his sins by rote, by the way, over the last 50 years. And the first thing out of their mouth when you say, well, what about the crime bill? What about banking deregulation? What about Iraq? What about Afghanistan? What about... You must like Trump.
Yeah.
Quit watching TV.
Yeah.
I mean, Rachel Madcow is a fucking villain, and she does no different than the Fox News guys.
Yes.
When Obama took over in 2008, Fox News went through the roof. Hannity and O'Reilly were the number one guys. Right?
Yeah.
And then when Trump took over, it's like, oh, well, the 2 minutes of hate, right? So all the so-called lefties went running right to MSNBC to the point where for 4 years, we got pitched a no evidence conspiracy theory about Russiagate. And when that flamed out because Mueller's a doddering old man who doesn't even know what the fuck's in his report, then they do it about the Ukraine. God forbid you do it on the emoluments clause. Or anything that's real. You do it on a fucking phone call to the Ukraine, which, by the way, you don't call Joe Biden's kid into the hearings. That's like doing Hamlet without Hamlet. Fucking pricks. And this is what makes me so angry. And by the way, I'm in Austin, supposed to be liberal.
Yeah.
Well, it is liberal. It's corporate liberal because I got 4 friends that think like me. I go to this one bar by my house and I've just stopped. Because I end up ranting and pissing everyone off. And people with a straight face going, well, I think Andrew Cuomo would be a great president. You're like, I got nothing. I got nothing. And so to your point, it's like, this hypocrisy drives me crazy. And it's because people are a walking Bible story. They want to think it's not going to rain. And guys like you and me were Noah. We're going, hey, man, it's drizzling. It's at least drizzling, right? I don't have a dog in this fight. I've been out of the church over 30 years, but I'm just like, these stories are human nature. It's not about whether or not I believe in Jesus. It's like, it's a great fucking story because it's human nature. And we keep doing the same goddamn thing. And then we wonder why, 4 years later, well, come on, it's the lesser two evils. But like a meth addict, we keep going back, right? Like listen, I'm 56 years old. I've already committed to the idea that I'm probably going to be single the rest of my life. I just got out of another relationship. This shit should not come up. I should not do this, what I'm doing with you, with my girlfriend, because this is why I'm still single. Unless you're lucky, because your wife seems pretty cool. Every time.
Yeah, she's good. She's great.
Every time I see her post, I'm like, well, she's just like Bruce. That's why Bruce is a happy cat. So there you go.
Yeah.
But no, man, it's just, but to your point, that hypocrisy is just kind of what people want to be comfortable and they don't want to be challenged. I mean, sometimes I say, hey, listen, man, I'm maybe a little too long in the tooth to be getting into some, massive revolt, but it's coming.
Yes.
Guys younger than me that are worried about their kids and grandkids.
Yep.
They're going to get out in the street and fight. And people will tell me, oh, I don't want to see that happen.
Yep.
And I'm like, well, it's probably coming.
I think it is coming. I think you're completely right. And I think we need to be as organized as we can, because I think we're going to need allies, and it is coming. I mean, I don't even know, about whether or not what we're going to have for an election, what it's going to look like. But 6 months is a long time, and I think it's a real opportunity to get organized. And I'm just hoping that something catches fire, because if we can have something, the thing about Bernie Sanders that was, really the most telling to me is that, there was a point where when we first got into the virus, he started saying, we should do this, we should do that. Everybody should have a couple of $1,000 a month. We need, universal health care. He was just saying this, even though he conceded to Biden. And it was like he had an opportunity to put into practice these New Deal ideas.
Right.
During the next 6 months, even, Abe, even if he didn't get elected, if he just put those things out and tried to mobilize people to do something about it,
right, that
could have been the catalyst to light up this prairie fire, because there's so many more people like us or close to us that just don't have a political organization to take all these ideas together and harness it into some kind of a program. But I think this is coming, and I think there's going to be a rebellion, and I think that we're going to have, and we have a real chance to change capitalism, especially over the next 6 months, because I think it's going to be really hurting, and I think the stock market's going to crash. People are not going to have jobs, and it's going to be ugly, and people are going to be looking for something that pulls things together. And I don't think, it's not going to be fascism. No. Right?
No, I agree with you there. But also, I don't think it will be fascism. Conversely, I don't think it's going to happen. It cannot happen within the construct of these two parties. They've already been proven to be corrupt.
Right.
They're just corrupt. That's it. I mean, there's no way a person can tell me with a straight face that the Democrats are doing anything other than aping FDR talking points from 80 years ago.
That's right.
There's just no way. I mean, now what we are here is, look what Pelosi did. I mean, she's bought and sold hook, line, and sinker right along Mitch McConnell. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the few things that they come out and say, hey, we got this. No. It's what they gave you, and you said it was cool. Mm-hmm. So what's the point of having a, quote, People's Party? Chris Hedges wrote a book about 10 years ago called The Death of the Liberal Class, which I've read about 6-7 times. Mm-hmm. And I love Chris Hedges because people love, he's like Lenny Bruce. People love to say they know what he says. Mm-hmm. And then they turn right around and they talk Rachel Madcow shit. And I'm going, well, then fuck you. You're lying. You don't know who Lenny Bruce is. You don't know who Chris Hedges is. You don't know who Cornel West is. Because if you're sitting there telling me with a straight face, oh yeah, I marched with them at Occupy, it was awesome. But you tell me Elizabeth Warren is a contender, or you're excited about Amy Klobuchar? Mm-hmm. Well, then you're a fucking liar. You don't know what you're talking about, or you're just lying.
Right.
And so everything, speak to your point, everything that you're saying, it's going to come down to people getting rid of their attachments, understanding that their party lied to them. The government is not their country. The government lied to them too. Their religion lied to them.
That's right.
Their news lied to them. Yep. And that's a bitter pill to swallow. And if you've had that kind of a quadrophenia moment where you realize that, you've been a mod all this time, but the ace face really works at the hotel.
Yep.
Right. And he just gives in the same way everyone else does. Well, then you have to go ahead and accept the fact that your party has lied to you.
Right. So I think what we need is between you and I, we need a socialist party.
Yes.
What might happen will be a party will form. It won't be called socialist,
Right.
but it will have the things that we're talking about. And,
Okay.
who cares if it's not called what we'd like it to be called?
No.
You know?
Right.
But I think that's what we need. It's a working class party that promotes socialism, and whatever the name is called, that's what we need. I mean, maybe it'll be called People's Party. I don't know what it'll be. But
well, let me ask you. Let me ask you on a side note, because you've got depth in this. So, I mean, Eugene Debs obviously got his ass kicked, and even though he got 1 million votes, he still got his ass handed to him. Warren Harding had to let him out of prison because Woodrow Wilson put him in jail because Woodrow Wilson's a fascist prick.
Mm-hmm.
And then the most recent of any sort of note was Henry Wallace,
mm-hmm.
Trying to run against Truman,
right.
and they called it the Progressive Party,
mm-hmm.
and they still got their asses handed to them.
Yeah,
and it was a disaster of a race. So, moving forward, how do you think we could do this without the Bernie Sanders bullshit of trying to reform the Democratic Party crap? I mean, it's got to be what you said.
Right. I just, I don't think that the party that I'm talking about is about winning an election. It's more like taking all the things that we've talked about, developing some sort of a program and a long and short-term plan about what we're going to do. And then, thinking I know this is hard to do because of the virus, but thinking more longer term, 4 years out, 8 years out, 12 years out, that it might take that long to actually build a party that people know about and that does things between electoral years, that organizes people. I don't think that voting for the party is really the answer, as much as if you're a political party and you get on the ballot, at least you have a forum to talk about your ideas and to spread them. So I'm not thinking about this party as being, in the next 6 months, it's going to be some kind of electoral party, but we need some expression of all the things that we're talking about that's organized into a plan. I'm not a Trotskyist, but some of the things that the Socialist Workers' Party used to do when they run the candidates, they had a plan. They had a transition program. They said, okay, if we get into power, we're going to do this over the next 3 years, and in the next 3 years, we're going to do this. I think for working class people, you need to say, if we're in power, this is what we're going to do. And you need to give people a framework. And I think that's part of what a good socialist party would do, would be to give people a framework.
That's cool, man. Well, hey, listen, I appreciate your time. We're going to have to start wrapping up, but this has been great. I'd love to have you come back on.
I would be thrilled.
If you're so inclined. This has been a really great conversation. I really appreciate your time and your expertise. And folks, my guest has been Bruce Lerro. And again, he's the founder of Planning Beyond Capitalism. Capitalism, I could speak. And again, patreon.com/The Bitter Truth. And if this stuff makes you uncomfortable, guys, it's supposed to. Sleep tight.